Here we go. Here's the wrap-up. I'm going to read it as fast as I can. On Monday, Jesus' God was trending, so we jumped on that bandwagon and talked about how God is central to every cultural and political conversation.
Thanks.
We also talked to Pastor Phil Kaiser about how God's law applies to all of life and how to help our fellow Christians stop being embarrassed of that. Knox and I also went straight out and purchased the Founders Constitution, all 5 volumes, but I would like to point out that Knox got his a whole day before I got mine. On Tuesday, we talked to attorney Mariah Gondero about the initial court victory for a San Jose church fined for contempt of court for opening during the lockdowns. Turns out the court order to shut down churches was unconstitutional, so it's not contempt of court to ignore unconstitutional orders. Everybody should write that down. We also talked to Blaine Kanzati, who explained how Idaho's heartbeat laws civil enforcement mechanism was allowed to go into effect last Friday, and the criminal enforcement mechanism is actually going into effect today, like literally today. While we still have our work cut out for us in ending all abortion in Idaho and seeing equal protection for all unborn persons, we are grateful for this massive step toward that victory. On Wednesday, I was out of the studio. Way out of the studio, not anywhere close to the studio, and Jared Longshore and Jason Farley took Knox and Gabe hostage, and they talked about crazy things. They talked about slavery and abortion and transgenderism, and did I mention that I was not here? Also, I wasn't even here. Thursday, Gabe was out of the studio suffering from the things that were said on Wednesday's show, I suppose, and campus preacher Keith did his best Gabe impressions while we watched Sam Harris deconstruct his own worldview in front of the world. Harris said that it was morally justifiable for the left to systematically conspire to prevent Trump from getting a second term because Trump is an asteroid. Except not really, but sort of. And just look at him. Can't you see it? Okay, I just want to close out with a quick recap of what we at Cross Polity think about Baptists. Are you ready? We believe that Baptists are brothers in the Lord. You are more than welcome to become full members of our churches, and we are happy to have you take communion with us. Yeah. And when you decide to have your kids baptized, we will baptize them by sprinkling, pouring, or immersion, or any way in between. Yeah. In fact, I personally baptized 4 kids by immersion this last Sunday during our worship service. And at the same time, we are Presbyterians, rowdy Presbyterians, as we have tried to warn you on multiple occasions. And that means we think that the most consistent reading of Scripture teaches that our children are included in the covenant of grace in the new covenant, just like they were in the old covenant. God promised Abraham that he would be his God and the God of his children after him, and instructed Abraham to give his sons the sign of that covenant with circumcision. The new covenant sign is baptism, and this new covenant promise of forgiveness is for us and our children and as many as the Lord our God will call. So just as God included the children of believers in the Old Testament and marked the sons with the sign of the covenant, we believe that the children of Christians should be marked with baptism in infancy and included in the covenant family. But just to be clear, we do not believe this means that they are automatically saved. They must still believe and be born again. But we do believe that the sign indicates that God is inclined to save them. Amen. We also believe that American evangelicalism is shot through with idols and perversions in both Presbyterian churches and Baptist churches. Most Presbyterian churches have rainbow flags out front, and many Baptist churches have gone completely woke. The worship of self-actuation, self-determination has made deep inroads into both traditions. Presbyterians are not much better than drag queen groomers. Ooh. We take it. And by the same token, mainstream Baptist culture and that kind of Arminian masturbatory revivalistic culture really is a gateway drug to the same ideologies that murder babies and carve up their bodies. Look, if you're not up for getting your denomination punched in the face, go find another news show. But I thought you all loved Paul Washer. We're talking about you. Oh, now, we have all kinds of room for covenantal Baptists. We do differ on the timing of baptism, and you should be aware of the dangers that can run downstream from that. And we do not mind saying that we need to be aware of the dangers of nominalism and sacramentalism and sacerdotalism that sometimes runs downstream of baptizing babies. But the bottom line is that you are welcome in our churches, welcome at our tables, welcome to be baptized when you would like to in our churches. But we are rowdy, and we will occasionally throw a pitch high and inside. But remember, we consider you our full-blood brothers, and we aren't going anywhere. Look at that.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until Monday, love God.
I'm trying to tell you all the
with all
time.
your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.
Wait, what?
You guys believe that stuff?
The season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. All right, so just stay like this. How am I doing here? So, yeah, you don't like this, huh? What does a Christian education look like when non-Christians are the ones who control the institutions of learning? This is a question that confronted Bishop Augustine of Hippo in North Africa in the 5th century AD. Augustine lived at the twilight of the Roman Empire. He himself had been trained with the best learning that Rome at that time had to offer. He himself actually came through the ranks and taught rhetoric in some of the best schools. And it was then, after he had come of age, that he converted to Christianity, but he wanted to continue the project of education, but this time for Christians. And so he had to confront the question, what does a Christian education look like when the unbelievers control the field? When they control the institutions, when the whole apparatus and curriculum of learning emerge from a pagan environment. And so Augustine wondered, what is it that Christians should jettison? What is it that Christians can embrace? What is it that Christians can adopt but in modified form? These are the questions that Augustine confronted when he sought to educate Christians in an environment when unbelievers dominated the field. A century later, we see a man in the south of Italy named Cassiodorus, who faced a very different educational landscape. He had to ask, what did a Christian education look like in an environment where unbelievers had abandoned the project of education altogether? The infrastructure of learning had entirely eroded. If education was to proceed at all, it had to proceed on the foundation of Christianity. The Christians had to be the ones preserving education. What does a Christian education look like when Christians are the ones forming the institutions, when Christians are the ones organizing the curriculum? Well, these two seasons in the history of education, the season of Augustine and the season of Cassiodorus, just 100 years apart, were very different moments in a crucial transformation that occurred in the history of the Western liberal arts. We're going to be studying this story. We're going to be going back to the sources. We're going to go back to Augustine. We're going to go back to Cassiodorus. We're going to ask ourselves, which of their predicaments most resembles our own? Which can we learn from Augustine's period? What can we learn from Cassiodorus's period? As we confront these questions, we're going to engage these sources, and we invite you to join us here at New St. Andrews College.